A garage door came down at 9:50 in the evening. That was the last moment anyone in this world could place Nancy Guthrie among the living. By 2:28 in the morning, she was gone. No forced entry. No witness. No scream that any neighbor ever heard. Just a doorbell camera, a masked figure, and a darkness that swallowed an 84-year-old great-grandmother whole. But here is what nobody told you. What you are about to hear is not simply a story about a missing woman. This is a story about the gap, the widening, documented, undeniable gap between what the public was told and what the verified record actually shows. And by the time this narration ends, you will understand exactly why this case has refused to go away, why the questions keep multiplying, and why the answers that should have come have still not arrived. Before we go any further, drop your city in the comments right now. Tell us where in the world you are watching from and what time it is there as you listen to this. Because this case has reached every corner of this planet. Every set of eyes matters. Every person watching puts more pressure on this investigation. So drop it below. We want to know where you are. And if this is your first time here, hit that like button right now. Share this video with everyone you know. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Because when this case breaks open, and it will break open, you will hear it here first. Before you can understand what was taken on the night of February 1st, 2026, you need to understand who Nancy Guthrie was. Not as a headline, not as a case number on a missing persons report, but as a human being who had spent 84 years building something real in this world. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky, a small, quiet community sitting just across the Ohio River from Cincinnati. She graduated from the University of Kentucky, married a man named Charles Errol Guthrie in December of 1963, and spent the early years of their life together following his engineering career across the globe. Charles was a mining engineer. His work took them all the way to Melbourne, Australia, where their youngest daughter, Savannah, came into the world in December of 1971. The family returned to the United States when Savannah was 2 years old and eventually put down roots in Tucson, Arizona. That was more than 5 decades ago, and Nancy never left. She built her entire life in that desert city. She raised 3 children there. She became, by every account from everyone who knew her, the gravitational center of her family. Her son Cameron became a decorated military pilot, a colonel who flew F-16s for 26 years with the Vermont Air National Guard. Her daughter Savannah graduated with honors from the University of Arizona and became one of the most recognized faces in American broadcast journalism, co-anchor of NBC's Today show since 2012. And her daughter Annie became a poet, a jeweler, and an educator, the author of a published poetry collection, married to an Italian-born AP biology teacher named Tommaso Caioni, who had lived and worked in Tucson for more than 15 years. In 1988, that center almost shattered. Charles Guthrie died of a cardiac event at 49 years old while on a mining exploration trip in Mexico. Savannah was 16. The family had no warning. And Nancy, a woman who had spent years raising her children full-time, went back to work. She took a public relations position at the University of Arizona so that Savannah and Annie could attend college tuition-free. She worked that position from 1990 to 2007, 17 years. Not because she craved a career, but because her children needed a path forward, and she was going to build it for them with her own 2 hands. By 2026, Nancy was 84 years old. She lived alone in the Catalina foothills, an unincorporated stretch of desert hillside north of Tucson, known for its sweeping views of the Santa Catalina Mountains and the kind of silence that city neighborhoods never have. She was sharp. She was active in her church. She was mentally present. But physically, she had limitations. Investigators confirmed early in the case that she had limited mobility, required daily medication, and relied on a pacemaker that communicated continuously with her cell phone. She was not a woman who could have wandered out of her home. Law enforcement eliminated that possibility within hours of the initial welfare check. Nancy Guthrie arrived at her daughter Annie's home at 5:32 in the evening. She had dinner. She spent time with family. Routine. Unremarkable. The kind of evening that does not register as significant until it becomes the last one. At approximately 9:48 in the evening, Tommaso Caioni, Annie's husband, Nancy's son-in-law, drove Nancy home. He waited until she was inside. The garage door closed at 9:50. Coyote drove away. That closing door is the last verified, documented moment Nancy Guthrie was confirmed to be alive and safely inside her own home. Everything after that point is reconstruction from forensic data. 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera at Nancy's front entrance was disconnected, not malfunctioned, not obscured, disconnected. At 2:12 in the morning, a motion sensor detected a presence at the property, but because Nancy's account lacked an active subscription, no video was captured. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker went dark. It stopped syncing. That was the moment investigators identified as the point of removal. The critical window, 1:47 in the morning to 2:28 in the morning. 41 minutes. Think about that number. 41 minutes. Between the camera going down and the pacemaker going silent. In those 41 minutes, an 84-year-old woman with a fragile heart, dependent on daily medication to survive, was removed from her home. And somewhere in that window, someone who knew where her cameras were, someone who came prepared with a mask and gloves and a backpack and a firearm secured at their hip, carried out what the Pima County Sheriff's Department would officially classify as a kidnapping. Now ask yourself this. How does a person know where a camera is positioned on a house they have never been inside? How does a person know the layout of a private residential property well enough to move through it in complete darkness, disable multiple devices, and leave without triggering a single neighborhood response? That is not luck. That is not improvisation. That is knowledge. And knowledge in a criminal investigation always has a source. Sunday morning, February 1st, 2026. Nancy Guthrie did not appear for her virtual church service. A member of her congregation noticed the absence and made contact with the family. At 12:15 in the afternoon, Pima County Sheriff's deputies arrived at Nancy's home for what their dispatch logs recorded as a welfare check. But the moment the first deputies stepped across the threshold, the nature of that call changed entirely. What they found inside was described in official statements as conditions that were, the department's own language, very concerning and inconsistent with a voluntary departure. The welfare check became a missing persons investigation. The missing persons investigation became a crime scene. And before the sun went down that Sunday, homicide investigators had been called in, and the Pima County Sheriff's Department had formally notified the FBI. Homicide investigators do not respond to welfare checks. They respond when the evidence at a scene is specific enough and serious enough to suggest that a life may have been taken. That is what the evidence inside Nancy's home communicated on day one. What was found? Forensic evidence consistent with Nancy's biological profile was recovered near the front entrance of the residence. Her medications were still inside. Her phone remained. And the doorbell camera at her front entrance had been physically removed from its mount. Not malfunctioned. Physically removed. Deliberately. On February 12th, 11 days after Nancy's disappearance, the FBI released a formal suspect profile. Male. Approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Average build. Black mustache visible beneath the mask. Black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack with reflective straps. A firearm secured in a holster near the center of the waist. An unusual carry position that forensic analysts noted specifically. There is a principle in criminal investigation that is foundational. The last person to see a victim alive is the first person you eliminate. Not because suspicion is automatic, but because logic demands it. And what is known in this case begins with a garage door closing at 9:50 in the evening on January 31st, 2026, and a man named Tommaso Coyote driving away into the Tucson night. Coyote was confirmed by the Sheriff's Department itself as the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. He drove her home after dinner. He waited until she was inside. He watched the garage door close. He left. For hours and 13 minutes later, the pacemaker stopped syncing. Sheriff Nanos issued his clearance statement on February 16th. He did not reference phone records placing Coyote at a different location during those 41 minutes. He did not cite surveillance footage from another address. He did not produce a named witness. He issued a statement. And the statement said, cleared. What it did not say, and what no official has publicly addressed since, is how. How was Coyote eliminated for that specific window? On February 16th, the same day the family was cleared, the vehicle Coyote drove that night was still sitting in a forensic evidence lot. Not returned. Not released. Still being actively processed. On February 26th, 10 full days after the public clearance, the vehicle was still sitting in that forensic lot, still held, still being examined. The Pima County Sheriff's Department would only confirm that the vehicle remained part of the active investigation. When investigators clear a family member and the associated vehicle is incidental evidence, they return it quickly. There is no investigative reason to hold it. What does not follow standard protocol is holding a vehicle in a forensic lot for weeks after a clearance, while simultaneously telling the press it remains part of the active investigation. Those two things cannot coexist without a reason. February 7, 2026. At least 3 Pima County Sheriff's deputies arrived at the home of Annie Guthrie in Tomaso County. 3 unmarked vehicles in the driveway. Lights inside the house dimmed. Shades drawn. Journalists covering the scene from the street reported bright, rhythmic flashes visible through the windows, consistent with crime scene photography. One deputy photographed as he left was seen carrying a white Pelican case when he walked in, and a brown paper bag when he walked out. Former CIA officer and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder identified that specific combination without hesitation. White case, evidence processing tools. Brown paper bag, evidence collection. Standard forensic protocol. The search focused primarily on the garage of the home, the same garage, for miles from Nancy's residence, that Coyote would have used on the night of January 31st. February 10th, 3 days after the consented search, the Sheriff's Department issued a public statement confirming that investigative activity at the Guthrie residences would continue. That statement was issued 6 days before the family was publicly cleared, and the results of what was collected during the search have never been publicly disclosed. The Google Nest doorbell at Nancy's front entrance was physically disconnected from its power source at 1:47 in the morning, but the device switched to local storage mode. The footage was not destroyed. It was pushed to a deletion queue in Google's backend servers. The perpetrator did not know that. They believed they had eliminated the record. They were wrong, and that error is what handed investigators the clearest visual evidence they have. Ashley Banfield's law enforcement source did not say one camera was compromised. The source said cameras, plural, multiple locations across the property. The suspect moved through the perimeter of Nancy's home and systematically addressed every security point they were aware of. That is not the behavior of someone who stumbled onto a target of opportunity. That is reconnaissance translated into action. Fox News confirmed that one of the doorbell images released by the FBI was captured on a different day than the others, not the morning of February 1st. An earlier date. The masked suspect had visited Nancy's front entrance before the night she was removed. CNN independently confirmed this. What does a prior visit mean forensically? It means the individual on that porch had been there before. Not to take Nancy. To look. To assess. To confirm the camera positions and establish the exact approach for the night they were planning. The FBI's formal suspect profile. Male, 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, average build, black mustache visible beneath the mask. The description encompasses millions of men in the United States. Law enforcement has never publicly stated whether Coyote's physical profile was compared against the FBI description during the clearance process, or whether that comparison produced a match or an exclusion. The clearance was issued. The physical analysis was not explained. What forensic analysts extracted from inside Nancy's home was a mixed DNA profile, genetic material from more than one individual, layered together at the site of recovery. The sheriff confirmed this publicly on February 19th. C.C. Moore of Parabon Nanolabs responded directly, saying mixed DNA profiles are common in cases involving forced physical contact. Here is the critical forensic distinction that almost nobody reported clearly. There are 2 completely different scenarios for a DNA clearance. Scenario 1. A direct biological comparison was conducted between a specific individual and the recovered crime scene material, and the profiles did not match. That is definitive exclusion. Scenario 2. Investigators ran the unknown profile through Cody's, received no match, and issued a clearance because none of the family had criminal records in the federal database. A person with no prior criminal record would have no profile in Cody's. A no-hit in Cody's does not exclude them. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has never publicly clarified which of these 2 scenarios actually occurred. That distinction, the single most important forensic clarification in this entire case, remains publicly unaddressed. On February 3rd, journalist Ashley Banfield reported that a senior law enforcement source, with direct knowledge of the active investigation, had told her that Tommaso Cioni may be the prime suspect in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. On February 12th, she confirmed her source had stood by that reporting every single day since it was first made. And she added something critical. Her source told her that after the initial broadcast, the scrutiny inside the investigation tightened up. Not loosened. Tightened. The clearance was issued on February 16th. The source still did not recant. Not once. Not after the sheriff's statement. Not after a single update that has come since. What this detail establishes is this. A senior law enforcement official with investigative access formed a specific conclusion about a specific individual and maintained that conclusion through a public clearance and through more than 4 weeks of ongoing investigation without retreating from it. That is a documented, verified fact sitting in the public record. It has never been explained. Every case deserves to be examined from both directions. Not as a formality, but as a genuine forensic obligation. The Pima County Sheriff's Department issued a public clearance on February 16th. The Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. Not hedged. Not qualified. Cleared. Annie and Cioni consented to the February 7th search without requiring investigators to obtain a warrant. They opened their home. They opened their garage. Defense attorneys in high-profile criminal cases advise their clients never to consent to a warrantless search. Annie and Cioni waived that right voluntarily. The family posted a $1 million cash reward, offered anonymously. No questions asked. Multiple alternative leads were pursued simultaneously. A delivery driver named Carlos Palazuelos was stopped approximately 60 miles south of Tucson near the U.S.-Mexico border. Investigators executed a court-authorized search warrant on his home. He cooperated and was released without charges. 3 days later, a second individual, Luke Daly, 37, a convicted felon residing approximately 2 miles from Nancy's residence, was detained. His home was searched. Neither was arrested. Both things can exist simultaneously. The family can be innocent, and the questions can still matter. The clearance can be genuine, and the documentation of unresolved gaps can still be legitimate journalism. Neither side of this erases the other. Both belong in the record. 33 days. That is how long it has been since the garage door came down at 9:50 in the evening on January 31st, 2026, and the world Nancy Guthrie had built over 8 decades went silent. But the investigation is not standing still. A new joint task force has been formalized. 4 dedicated detectives and a sergeant from the Pima County Sheriff's Homicide Unit have been relocated to the FBI's Tucson field office, working this case, and this case only. This is not a case going cold. This is a case being restructured for the long game. Sheriff Nanos, speaking to NBC News this week, used a specific phrase. He said investigators are definitely closer. Not possibly. Not hopefully. Definitely. He said he personally believes Nancy Guthrie is alive. NBC News confirmed on March 4th that investigators are calling the suspect's cell phone a missing piece. Cell tower data is being analyzed. Sheriff Nanos confirmed it has already helped eliminate people and examine specific threads, and that there is still significant data in that dataset that has not yet been fully processed. A cell phone, active in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood during the critical window, would place its owner at a specific location. Not approximately. Precisely. The FBI has accumulated approximately 10,000 hours of video footage from the surrounding neighborhood. Ring cameras, Nest cameras, commercial surveillance systems, dash cams. 10,000 hours of footage being reviewed frame by frame. A neighbor's Ring camera captured a vehicle moving at speed through the area at approximately 2:30 in the morning on February 1st, 6 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker went dark. That vehicle and that footage are being actively analyzed right now. There are 5 questions that have never been answered. 1. What is the verified alibi for the 41-minute window between 1:47 and 2:28 in the morning? 2. What did the 3-hour consented search of the garage on February 7th produce? 3. Was a direct biological comparison conducted between a specific individual and the mixed DNA profile recovered from inside Nancy's residence? Or was the clearance based on a Cody's database search that would show nothing for a person without a prior criminal record? 4. Does the physical profile of the last confirmed person to see Nancy alive match or contradict the FBI's forensic description? 5. Why does a senior law enforcement official with direct investigative access still maintain their original assessment despite a public clearance? Those 5 questions are not speculation. They are documented. They are unresolved. And they will not be answered until the forensic analysis running in 2 separate laboratories produces results that either confirm or eliminate the connections that a senior law enforcement source has maintained from day 1. On day 24, Savannah Guthrie posted a video that stopped the country. She said every hour and minute and second, and every long night, had been agony. She said the family still believed in a miracle. And then she said the words that no daughter should ever have to say out loud. She acknowledged her mother may already be gone, that she may have already gone home to the Lord she loves. And then she said, if you have been waiting, and you have not been sure, let this be your sign. Please come forward. Tell what you know. Help us bring our beloved mom home. She was not speaking to the general public. She was speaking to someone specific. Someone who knows. Someone who has been watching this case unfold and calculating the cost of staying silent. Savannah Guthrie knows the difference between a public appeal and a private one. She has been in journalism for over 2 decades. That language was chosen deliberately. If you are watching this right now and you have information about what happened to Nancy Guthrie, there are 2 places to go. The Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line, 520-351-4900. The FBI tip line, 1-800-CALL-FBI. $1 million paid in cash. Anonymously. No questions asked. The masked suspect on that doorbell footage is still unidentified. The mixed DNA inside Nancy's home is still being processed. The cell tower data is still being analyzed. The task force is running out of the FBI's Tucson office right now, today, following threads the public cannot see. The sheriff says they are closer. The science is still running. 7 details. 5 unanswered questions. 1 woman who deserves to come home. This case is not over. And this channel is not finished covering it. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. Because when the DNA results come back, when the cell tower data resolves, when the next break in this case happens, you will hear it here first. With the same forensic precision, the same verified sourcing, and the same standard that brought you through every chapter of this breakdown. No speculation dressed as fact. No dramatization substituted for evidence. Just the record, examined honestly, until the answers arrive. Nancy Guthrie is still out there, and the answers are still coming. See you in the next one.